Okay, so to get our heads around a huge and often pretty misleading economic idea, let's kick things off with something super simple, a pizza party.
All right, so picture this. You walk into a party. The music's great, everyone's laughing. You can just feel the good vibes, right? It feels like the perfect setup for a good night.
And then your eyes land on the table. And wow, it is loaded with 12 fresh, hot pizzas. I mean, the smell is incredible. You know right away there's more than enough for everyone. This is exactly the party you were hoping for.
And here's the best part. It's a pretty small gathering, just 10 guests, you included. So you do that quick math in your head, 12 pizzas, 10 people. Oh yeah, everybody's gonna eat really well tonight. No stress, no one's gonna be fighting over the last slice.
You know, this right here, this is what a healthy, booming economy feels like for the people living in it. There are plenty of resources and everyone's individual well-being is high. Life's good. Let's call this our baseline for a great party and a great economy.
But then, things take a turn. The host, and for this story, let's just imagine our host is a politician, steps up with this big, grand announcement. Hey, great news, everyone! The party is growing. But what does that actually mean?
So, here's what this growth looks like in practice. First, the front door swings open and 10 more people pour in. Just like that, the number of guests has doubled. Then someone brings out one single extra pizza. So let's look at the new reality. We've now got 20 people all staring at just 13 pizzas. Yeah, those happy smiles are starting to disappear.
And this is the heart of the deception. See, the politician can stand up and proudly point to a chart and say, look, the total amount of pizza went up. And you know what? They're not lying. 13 is technically more than 12. That's what they call headline GDP growth. But then you look down at your own plate, and your reality, it's the complete opposite. Your slice is pathetic. Your actual share of the pie has totally collapsed.
Okay, so this whole pizza party thing, it's not just some clever metaphor. This exact situation is playing out in the real world, right now. And a perfect example of this is Canada.
Let's just look at the raw numbers here. Canada is adding over 1.2 million new people every single year. In our little pizza story, these are all the new guests showing up at the party. That is one of the fastest rates of population growth in the entire developed world.
But here's the massive catch. While the number of guests is just skyrocketing, the pizzas, the really critical stuff that makes for a good quality of life, they're not keeping up, not even close. We're talking about housing, infrastructure like roads and transit, hospital capacity, heck, even wages for the average person. They just can't scale up that fast. So what happens next?
Well, you end up in something called a per capita recession. It's a tricky situation where the overall economy, the total number of pizzas, is getting bigger. But the economic value per person, the actual size of your slice, is shrinking. It's a decline in your standard of living, but it's disguised as economic growth. So that leads to a really important question, right? If this number is so misleading for regular people, why in the world would leaders keep focusing on it? Why would they play this trick? Well, it turns out the incentives are incredibly powerful. A rising headline GDP number, it looks fantastic in reports and on the evening news. It helps the country keep a high credit rating, which means they can borrow money more cheaply. It keeps the international debt markets happy and calm. And maybe the biggest reason of all, it buys political time. It creates this illusion of a strong economy, even while things might be getting tougher for the average citizen.
So after all that, what's the big takeaway here? How should you think about this differently? The next time you hear someone talking about the economy, I want you to remember 3 key things.
First thing, just remember this. Gross domestic product, or GDP, it is not a measure of your personal prosperity. It doesn't measure how well you're doing.
Second, what it does measure is just total economic activity. That's it. And you can make that number go up simply by adding more people to the mix, even if every single one of those people ends up with less than before. And that brings us to the third and most important point, which is captured perfectly in this idea. The economy isn't growing for you, it's growing around you. The big machine can keep getting bigger and bigger, churning away, while your own personal situation is actually getting worse. So from now on, whenever you hear a politician or a pundit celebrating economic growth, I want you to ask yourself one very simple question. Is the economy really getting stronger, or are we all just getting smaller slices of the pizza?